My brother uninvited me from Christmas saying, "This gala is no place for peasants." I'd been secretly paying his rent, his kids' tuition, and his wife's Porsche lease for 3 years. I replied, "True elites fund their own luxury." Then I made one phone call. 3 days after surgery, I was lying on my couch in a painkiller haze when my brother called to uninvite me from Christmas, not to check on me, not to ask how the procedure went, whether I needed anything, whether someone was looking after me. Gregory has never in his life called to ask how I was doing. That particular frequency simply doesn't exist in him. He called to uninvite me from Christmas. "This gala is no place for peasants," he said, just like that. Clean, cold, the exact cadence of a man who has been practicing that sentence in his head and is finally pleased with how it sounds. Then he hung up. I sat there on my couch with stitches pulling across my abdomen and tissues piled on the cushion beside me, and my phone still warm in my hand. And I thought, he called me a peasant. Me, Malene Karayan, the woman who had been, for the past 3 years, quietly and completely anonymously paying his rent on a 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood he couldn't afford, his 2 children's private school tuition at $34,000 a year each, and the monthly lease on his wife Cassandra's silver Porsche Cayenne, because God forbid Cassandra drive something with a Japanese name, over $150,000, in silence. Out of something I had mistaken at the time for love, I opened my banking app. 3 scheduled transfers sat there, fat and automatic. Tuition, Porsche, country club dues that Cassandra had the audacity to list in our shared document as groceries. I canceled all 3. 1 tap, 2 taps, 3, done. My hands weren't shaking. That's the part I remember most clearly. I had expected them to shake. They were completely, perfectly still. Let me tell you who Gregory is, because understanding what came next requires understanding what he is made of. Gregory Carrion is 44 years old and has never once in his adult life paid for anything with money he actually earned. This isn't a character flaw, or rather it is, but it's a cultivated one. Gregory was raised to believe that the management of wealth was a more refined pursuit than the generation of it, and he has spent his entire adulthood perfecting the art of living adjacent to money without ever actually possessing any. He married Cassandra Whitmore 11 years ago. Cassandra came from old Connecticut money that had been quietly diluted over 3 generations, to the point where the family name was all that remained, the name and the habits, which are somehow always the last things to go. They were perfectly matched. 2 people who required a luxury lifestyle and had between them exactly 0 reliable means of funding one. Enter me. I am 39 years old. I write. Specifically, I ghostwrite. Memoirs primarily for executives and public figures, and occasionally the kind of quietly famous people who have a story worth telling, but not the technical architecture to tell it. It is solitary work, invisible work, work that produces no Instagram content and generates no cocktail party conversation. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent but unremarkable part of the city. I drive a 7-year-old Volvo. I own good furniture and bad art and more books than any reasonable person needs. I am, by Gregory's taxonomy, a peasant. What I am, by my bank statement, is the person who has been funding his life for 3 years. It started the way these things always start, with a crisis that felt temporary. February 2021. Gregory called at 11 p.m., which should have been my first signal, because Gregory only calls late when the number he needs is large. His investment firm had collapsed. Not his fault, he explained. The market, the timing, the specific catastrophic alignment of forces that only ever seemed to conspire against Gregory personally. He needed a bridge loan, just enough to cover rent for a few months while he restructured. I said yes because he was my brother, and I loved him, and I had it. The few months became a year. The loan became a habit. The habit became infrastructure. By the time Gregory called me a peasant on December 7th, I had transferred $152,400 into the operational ecosystem of his life, and not once, not a single time, had he asked how my work was going, whether I was managing, whether the woman quietly keeping his family afloat had needs of her own. I had been recovering from a hysterectomy for 72 hours. He called to uninvite me from Christmas. The morning after the surgery, my friend Petra had come over with soup, and the particular competence of a woman who knows exactly what post-operative recovery looks like. Petra Nazarian is a physician's assistant at a surgical center on the north side of the city, 12 years of clinical experience, a degree from Northwestern, and the specific no-nonsense efficiency of someone who has held human organs in her hands and therefore has 0 patience for anyone's performance of fragility. She'd set up my apartment, refilled my prescriptions, and sat on the end of my bed while I drifted in and out of a Percocet haze, checking my vitals with the quiet competence of a woman doing what needed doing. Gregory called, I told her, when I surfaced around 4 p.m. on day 3. She looked up from her phone. And he uninvited me from Christmas. Petra has a face that is generally excellent at hiding her opinions. It failed her completely. He said it was a gala, I continued, and I quote, "No place for peasants." She was quiet for 3 full seconds. Malene, she said, tell me you're going to do something about this. I already did, I said, and showed her my banking app. She looked at the canceled transfers, then at me, then back at the screen. Good, she said, with the specific satisfaction of someone who has been watching a situation build to this conclusion for years and is relieved it has finally arrived. Now rest. I rested, but my mind didn't. Gregory called screaming on December 10th at 9:22 a.m. I was on my second cup of tea, moving carefully around my apartment in the slow, deliberate way of a woman whose abdominal muscles are currently held together by surgical thread. I let it ring twice before I answered. The school said the payment bounced. His voice was at a register I associated with men who have never once been told no by someone they couldn't afford to lose. What is wrong with you? Good morning, Gregory. What is happening? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to get that call from the bursar's office? Hannah was there. She heard the conversation. I'm sorry Hannah was upset, I said. And I meant it. Hannah was 8 years old and blameless in all of this. Then fix it. I'm a peasant, remember? I said pleasantly. Peasants don't fund elite lifestyles. Silence. Then the specific sound a man makes when the architecture of his reality is undergoing rapid, catastrophic structural failure. You're punishing children, he said, lowering his voice to the register he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. Because I hurt your feelings. I'm correcting a mistake, I said. Also, tell Cassandra the Porsche payment is gone too, and the country club dues. All of it. The silence that followed was long and total. Then I heard something I had never heard from my brother before. Nothing. Not rage, not calculation, not the smooth social machinery of a man managing a room. Just nothing. The sound of a person who has just stepped onto ground they didn't know wasn't there. I hung up. I want to tell you I felt good in those days between the call and Christmas. I want to say the cancellations brought relief, closure, some clean sense of restored justice. Mostly I felt tired. Post-surgical tired, yes, but also the deeper exhaustion of a person who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has only just set it down and discovered that her arms still remember the weight. I thought about the first transfer, February 2021. I remembered sitting at my desk with Gregory's voice in my ear, his story precise and practiced, and the feeling I'd had of being needed, of being for once the person in the family who could fix something. I had spent my entire childhood being the quiet one, the bookish one, the daughter who didn't require management. I had spent my adulthood as the one whose success was simultaneous, invisible, and assumed. The transfers had felt, at first, like finally being seen. They were, in fact, just being used differently. On December 14th, a credit card alert appeared on my phone at 2:17 p.m. $5,230, a luxury boutique downtown. I stared at the notification for a long moment. The card in question was one I had given Gregory years ago, an emergency card linked to my account, given during the early months of the crisis when he'd needed purchasing flexibility, and I had trusted him with it. I had forgotten to cancel it. He had not forgotten to use it. I pulled up the transaction, verified the merchant, a luxury boutique where Cassandra had been photographed attending a charity preview 3 months earlier. Not food, not school supplies, not anything connected to the children whose welfare he'd invoked 10 minutes into every difficult conversation. A $5,000 shopping trip, charged to me. I called the bank. I reported the card stolen. Then I sat with my phone in my hand for a long moment, looking out the window at the gray December street, and I made the second call. Diana Mercer answered on the second ring. Diana and I had been friends since our first year of college, 2 women who had recognized in each other, across a crowded university library, the specific intensity of people who take things seriously. She had gone to law school, 13 years of private practice. She was the kind of attorney other attorneys called when they needed someone who would not blink. I need a formal demand letter, I told her. $152,000. Every transfer, documented. Every text where he said he'd pay me back. Every receipt. A pause. Malene, Diana said slowly, once I send this, it's not a family dispute anymore. It's a legal proceeding. It hasn't been a family dispute for a long time, I said. Send it Christmas Eve. Another pause. Then Diana, who had known me for 18 years and understood the specific tone of a woman who has made a decision and is done renegotiating it, said simply, done. The week between the stolen charge and Christmas was the quietest of my recent memory. Gregory called 4 times. I let them go to voicemail. Each message was a different tactical register. First anger, then grievance, then a performance of concern about my recovery then. On the 4th call, something that almost resembled an apology before pivoting into a request that I reconsider. I listened to all 4. I did not call back. Petra came by on the 20th to check my incision. She sat on my kitchen counter eating an orange while I made coffee, and she told me, with the bluntness of a woman who has earned the right to it, that the stolen credit card charge was not ambiguous. That's fraud, Malene. Actual fraud, not a gray area. I know, I said. Diana knows too. Diana is aware of the full picture. Petra peeled a section of orange. And the demand letter goes Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, I confirmed. She nodded, satisfied, the way she nodded when a patient's numbers were moving in the right direction. On December 22nd, I received a text from my sister-in-law, Cassandra. This was unusual. Cassandra communicated with me primarily through the medium of Gregory, the way certain countries conduct diplomatic relations through intermediaries rather than direct contact. Malene, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Gregory didn't mean anything by what he said. You know how he gets. We would love for you to come Christmas Eve. The children miss you. I read it twice. Then I looked at the timing, 2 days before Christmas, which was exactly when Cassandra would have discovered that the Porsche's December payment had not arrived, had not been rescheduled, and was not coming. I didn't reply. On the 23rd, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man identifying himself as Richard Lowe, collections coordinator for the Porsche Financial Services Center, handling Cassandra's lease account. He was professional, apologetic, and clear. The account was 60 days past due, an additional payment had been missed, and without resolution by the 26th, the vehicle would be subject to repossession. I told him I was not a party to the lease agreement, which was true. My payments had been voluntary and private, which was something I had allowed to happen, and something I would be untangling for some time. He thanked me and hung up. I sat with that information for a moment. The Porsche's December payment was now irrecoverably missed. Cassandra had apparently been relying on my December transfer, which I canceled on December 7th, to cover it. The repossession timeline would proceed regardless of anything happening inside the walls of Gregory's house. The repo truck, if it came, would come on its own schedule. It did not yet occur to me that its schedule would align with Christmas Eve. December 24th arrived gray and cold, with the specific bleak sky of a Midwestern winter that has given up pretending to be picturesque. I dressed carefully. Wool coat, dark, good boots that were, I will admit, slightly muddy from the walk I'd taken that morning. My first real walk since the surgery, slow and careful around the block, breathing cold air and thinking about what I was about to do. I had 2 gifts for Mason and Hannah, wrapped simply. Mason was 11 and had asked me months ago for a specific book about aviation, which I had found and wrapped in brown paper. Hannah was 8 and loved anything involving color, and I had bought her a professional-grade watercolor set with a small instruction book. In my coat pocket was Diana's envelope, thick cream paper, the Mercer Law Group return address in the upper left corner. Inside, 12 pages of meticulously documented demand, notarized referencing Exhibit A through Exhibit J, bank transfer records, text message screenshots, the single-signed acknowledgement Gregory had sent me in 2021 confirming his intent to repay. Diana had also, at my request, included documentation of the fraudulent credit card charge, flagged separately, with language noting that a report had been filed with the issuing bank and that the matter had been referred to her office for potential escalation. I drove to Gregory's neighborhood in silence. His house was exactly as I remembered, large, Georgian style, set back from the street behind manicured hedges that cost more to maintain than my car. The driveway as I turned onto the street was a statement. Town cars, 2 Teslas, a Land Rover, the gleaming evidence of people who had arrived to be seen arriving. Through the tall bay windows, chandeliers blazed, and I could make out the movement of figures in formal dress. Cassandra's Porsche was tucked behind the hedge on the left side of the driveway, neatly placed, half concealed, as if she'd known, in some animal way, that the car needed to be less visible tonight. I parked on the street. I picked up the gifts and the envelope. I walked to the door. Gregory opened it before I could knock. His face did something complicated when he saw me, a fast sequence of recognition, calculation, and the specific variety of alarm that registers when an unpredictable element has appeared in a controlled environment. "Leave," he said, his voice low and venomous. "Right now. I'm dropping gifts for the kids," I said. "I'll be 2 minutes." "Who is it, Gregory?" A woman's voice from inside, sharp, interested. He couldn't make a scene. Not tonight. Not with every person whose opinion mattered to him standing 30 feet away in his living room. I watched him absorb this constraint in real time, watched him swallow whatever he'd been about to say, and arrange his face into something that would pass, briefly, for welcome. He pulled me inside. 15 people in designer clothes turned to look. I stood in the entrance hall in my wool coat and my slightly muddy boots, holding 2 wrapped presents and a legal envelope, and I looked at the chandeliers and the floral arrangements and the professional catering staff moving through the room with trays, and I thought, I paid for this. Not all of it, but enough of it. Cassandra emerged from the direction of the kitchen, silver tray in hand, wearing a dress that I recognized from the luxury boutique receipt. Her eyes went wide when she saw me, not with surprise exactly, but with the specific expression of someone who has been watching for a threat and has just spotted it. "We weren't expecting you," she said. "I'm just dropping these off," I said. "I won't stay." I was turning toward the marble side table when a woman detached herself from the nearest group and moved toward me. She was 60 or so, elegant in the particular way of people who stopped trying to look expensive decades ago because they no longer needed to try. Champagne flute, quiet eyes that missed nothing. She looked at me with the focused attention of someone placing a face. "Wait," she said. "You're Malene Karayan." Gregory laughed, the specific high, anxious laugh of a man watching a bridge he built begin to shake. No, I think she just writes little stories, she's not. The woman ignored him with the confidence of someone who has never once in her life adjusted her behavior to manage a man's discomfort. My employer has been trying to reach you for months, she said. The Horizon Memoir Project. I'm Ellen Cho. I'm the senior editor at Whitmore House. She said the name of the publishing house the way people say the names of institutions that require no further elaboration. The room had gone quiet. Not quiet as in people lowering their voices. Quiet as in 15 people simultaneously recognizing that something more interesting than cocktail conversation was occurring. I've been on the wait list, I said. I kept my voice level, conversational. 8 months, I think. We cleared the wait list in October, Ellen said. My assistant has been leaving messages. Gregory's face had gone the specific color of a man who has built an entire social identity on a story that is disintegrating in front of the exact audience he needed it to hold. The story he had told these people, his network, the glittering apparatus of his social ambition, was that his sister was a small, quiet, provincial person, a sad little nobody, a peasant, to use his preferred term. He had been telling that story for years, and tonight he had assembled the audience for whom he most needed it to be true. I walked to the marble side table. I set the children's gifts down carefully. Then I set Diana's envelope down beside them, not quietly, with the specific, deliberate weight of a document that has been a long time coming. That, I said, and I did not lower my voice, is a formal legal demand for the $152,000 I've been transferring into your account since February 2021. Gregory's mouth opened. Nothing came out. In my peripheral vision, I saw Cassandra's hand tighten around the silver tray. I saw Ellen Cho's expression shift from curiosity to the particular alertness of a person who has just understood that they are witnessing something real. The documentation covers every transfer, I continued. Bank records, text messages, the signed acknowledgement from 2021. It also references a separate matter, the $5,200 charged to my credit card without my authorization on December 14th, which has been reported to the bank and flagged for potential escalation. The word authorization landed in the room like a stone in still water. Fraud. Everyone in that room understood what authorization meant. Gregory found his voice. It came out thin, stripped of its usual architecture. You are making a scene in front of my guests. I'm dropping off gifts for your children, I said. Mason likes aviation. Hannah likes color. They're good kids, Gregory. This has nothing to do with them. Orange light began to pulse across the bay windows. Slow, rhythmic, the amber flash of a vehicle with emergency lights. Every head in the room turned. Something large had pulled into the driveway. The repo truck was white, heavy, and completely indifferent to the occasion. It had a spotlight mounted on the cab that swept the driveway with the unhurried efficiency of a machine doing a job. The driver, I would later learn, was a man named Dale Pruitt, with 11 years in vehicle recovery, who had absolutely no idea he was about to repossess a Porsche from a Christmas Eve gala, and would later describe the scene to his dispatcher as the wildest pickup of my career. Cassandra's silver Porsche Cayenne, tucked behind the hedges as if privacy could protect it, had a recovery notice on the windshield within 4 minutes. Through the bay window, we watched Dale Pruitt attach the rigging to the front axle with the calm, practiced efficiency of a man who has done this 1,000 times in 1,000 driveways for 1,000 people who believed it wouldn't happen to them. Cassandra set the silver tray down on the nearest surface. A champagne flute slid and tipped, and no one moved to catch it. Gregory was looking at the window. His profile was absolutely still, the way faces go still when the muscle that produces expression has simply stopped receiving signal. The performance was over. The room had seen the man behind the gala, and the man behind the gala was someone who had been living for 3 years on his sister's money. Money he'd taken without gratitude, spent without restraint, and dismissed without a second thought from a hospital couch 3 days after surgery. I buttoned my coat. "Merry Christmas, Gregory," I said. I walked to the door. He didn't follow me. Diana called me at 10:47 p.m., and as I was sitting in my apartment with a cup of tea and the particular bodily exhaustion of a woman who has had recent abdominal surgery and has done too much today and does not regret a single moment of it. "How did it go?" she asked. I told her. She was quiet for a moment. "The credit card charge," she said. "I want to move on that quickly if you're willing. The bank has already flagged it. With documentation, it's clean. The DA's office handles these as a matter of course. Do what needs doing," I said. "And the demand letter? He'll have it delivered formally tomorrow. He received it tonight in front of 15 people, which I suspect will accelerate his response timeline." Diana made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was adjacent to one. "Ellen Cho," she said, "from Whitmore House. She found me, apparently. Malene." Diana's voice carried the specific energetic warmth of a woman who has known you long enough to have watched you become yourself. You know, the Horizon Project is one of the most prestigious memoir commissions in the industry right now. I know, I said. And your brother told his entire social circle you wrote little stories. He did, a beat. I hope someone had a very good view of his face, Diana said. 15 people, I said, including Ellen Cho. The legal process moved with the efficiency that Diana always brought to things. Thorough, documented, relentless in the specific way of a woman who has zero interest in ambiguity. Gregory retained an attorney, a man named Philip Ashe, who had 17 years of civil practice and the particular energy of a lawyer who has accepted a case he already knows is a losing one. Philip called Diana in early January with the opening position that the transfers had been gifts, not loans. Diana replied with the signed acknowledgement from 2021, in which Gregory had written in his own hand, "I'll pay you back every cent, I promise." She attached it to Exhibit A and sent it across without comment. The credit card matter was referred to the county prosecutor's office. Detective Rosa Fuentes, 12 years in financial crimes, a caseload that would make most people weep, called me on January 11th to take my statement. She was brisk and methodical and covered every detail with the precision of someone who has learned that fraud cases are won or lost on documentation. The transaction is clear, she told me. Unauthorized use of a financial instrument. The report from the bank is on file. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I said. She thanked me and hung up. Gregory settled in February. Not the full $150,400. The negotiated figure was $127,000, structured as a payment plan, secured against a portion of equity in the house, legally documented and court-filed. Diana had pushed for the full amount. I had told her $127,000, properly secured, was sufficient, not generosity. Mathematics. The cost of continued litigation against a man with limited liquid assets was not worth the additional $25,000. The credit card charge was resolved separately. Gregory paid restitution of $5,200 plus fees and received a formal diversion agreement, no conviction, but a requirement to complete a financial fraud education program and maintain a clean record for 24 months. Detective Fuentes called to let me know. He's lucky, she said. I know, I said. The country club membership had already lapsed for non-payment. The Porsche, recovered December 24th, was auctioned by the leasing company in January. Cassandra, I was told by a mutual acquaintance, was driving a used Honda CR-V. I thought about that for a moment when I heard it. Not with satisfaction, not with cruelty, just with the specific recognition that the Honda CR-V is a perfectly good vehicle for a person who is living within their actual means. I signed the Horizon memoir contract in March. Ellen Cho took me to lunch the week before the signing. A quiet restaurant near the publishing house, white tablecloths, the kind of place where you go when the conversation matters more than the food. Your brother told everyone at that party you wrote little stories, she said, without preamble as the water was being poured. He did, I said. For the record, she said, the author whose memoir you ghost wrote in 2022, the one that spent 11 weeks on the Times list, we published that. I know, I said. I wrote it, she smiled. The Horizon Project has a 2-year timeline and a budget that I'll outline in the contract documentation. The subject is, she named someone. I will not name them here, for the obvious reasons. They've been very particular about their collaborator. You were the only name on their list. I thought about Gregory's voice. This gala is no place for peasants. I picked up my water glass. Tell me about the project, I said. I want to be honest with you about something. This story does not end with me reconciled with my brother, or with Gregory transformed by consequence into a different man, or with Christmas restored to its appropriate mythology. Those endings exist in movies and Reddit comment sections and the imagination of people who believe that revelation produces change. Gregory is what he is. The settlement did not make him grateful. The public humiliation did not make him humble. The last time I heard from him, through an intermediary, was a communication suggesting that I had always had it in for him, and that my actions at the Christmas party had been premeditated for maximum damage. He wasn't entirely wrong about the premeditation. He was wrong about the motive. I didn't do it to destroy him. I did it because I had finally, after 3 years and $152,000 and a phone call that came when I was 3 days out of surgery, understood something that should have been obvious much earlier. You cannot love someone into seeing you. You cannot fund someone into valuing you. You cannot be generous enough, patient enough, quiet enough, useful enough to earn the basic dignity of being treated like a person, rather than a resource. Some people look at the people who love them and see leverage. Gregory has always been one of those people. I spent 3 years hoping I was wrong about that. The December 7th phone call was the final answer to a question I should have stopped asking years before. I am recovered from the surgery. The incision scar has faded to a thin white line just below my waistband that I mostly forget is there. I write in the mornings now, in a quiet that used to feel lonely and has gradually become simply peaceful. The Horizon Project is proceeding. My apartment, which Gregory once described to his friends as modest, is exactly as I like it, full of books, adequately heated, mine. Mason sent me a card in February. 11 years old, block letters, a drawing of an airplane in the corner. Aunt Malene, thank you for the book. I read the whole thing. I want to be a pilot. I have it on my refrigerator. Hannah called on my birthday in April and sang, slightly off-key with great confidence and joy. The kids are fine. They are, in fact, wonderful. They did not choose their father any more than I did. They are the only thread still connected, and I am keeping it. Everything else, the transfers, the country club, the Porsche, the performance of family that required my money and my silence and my willingness to be called a peasant by the person I was keeping afloat, all of it is gone. I didn't need to destroy him. I just stopped holding him up. The rest he did entirely on his own.